And we are live. How's it going, everybody? This is Rival and Kenobi. Welcome to this special live stream that I'm going to do here on my channel. So today is November 13th, 2015. And 10 years ago, the wrestling world lost one of the all-time greats. This was quite a blow to professional wrestling when this wrestler passed away. It's still sad 10 years later that he's not with us anymore. And today I wanted to come on here live and I wanted to pay my respects to this man. So today this is, as the live stream title states, this is me remembering Eddie Guerrero 10 years later. You know, it's still sad, like I said, that Eddie Guerrero is no longer alive. His death was shocking when it happened, 10 years ago. And it's still a little shocking, so to speak. 10 years later, it feels like just yesterday that we wrestling fans were getting the news that Eddie had unexpectedly passed away, and he was in his late 30s. He wasn't even 40 when he passed away. So today, like I said, I wanted to come on here live and pay my respects to Eddie Guerrero. Basically, there's no format to this. I am just going to, share my thoughts on my favorite Eddie matches, favorite Eddie moments, and what I think would have happened in Eddie's career had he still wrestled in 2006, 2007, and what I think he'd be doing today. So we're going to start this video off with the obvious question. Where was I when I found out about Eddie's passing, and what was my initial reaction? I was here at home that Sunday when I found out about Eddie's passing. I was using my desktop. I was on the internet, and I don't remember if a friend told me that Eddie had passed or if I read about it on either AOL News or Yahoo News, because back then I had AOL, and they had the little news section that will pop up when you signed on to the server, and I think it was there I might have read something about Eddie passing. So it was either I found out about it through a news site, or one of my friends texted me or messaged me on Instant Messenger, if you guys remember that from back in the day, and they said that Eddie Guerrero had passed. And I was shocked. It seemed surreal, because I had just seen Eddie on that SmackDown a few days ago when he wrestled Mr. Kennedy a few days before his passing, and he looked fine. But I didn't know back then that SmackDown was filmed on Tuesdays and then aired Thursday nights, or now Friday nights, in 2015. And it was just surreal, I saw him on SmackDown, he seemed fine, and then days later he passed away. It's, like I said, surreal. To me, it reminds me of Warrior, when Warrior passed away last year, because I still find that surreal, that he was in a good state, he had gotten inducted into the Hall of Fame, then made an appearance at WrestleMania 30, gave that great speech the night after on Raw, and then the day after Raw, he passed away from a heart attack. It's just surreal, So after I found out about Eddie's passing, I went to WWE.com, and I believe they had an article posted, not like an obituary, but they had an article posted saying that Eddie had passed, and they had like a chronicle of sorts of his career highlights and his life. And I remember I had MySpace back in the day, if you guys remember MySpace, and I copied and pasted that whole thing in a blog, and I posted it, and then I said at the end, rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero, Viva La Raza. So that was pretty much all I did that day. I was shocked. I wasn't saddened by his passing, but I was shocked. It was crazy. So the next night, the Raw and SmackDown Super Show that was going to be filmed ended up being the two-part Eddie Guerrero tribute special, which I was looking forward to watching, because I just wanted to see what was going to happen. It was very similar to the Raw's Owen tribute show from back in 1989. I just wanted to see, what was going to happen. I was looking forward to hearing the testimony, so to speak, from the wrestlers who knew Eddie well, like Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio, Dean Malenko. I was just looking forward looking forward in the sense of just hearing them share their memories of Eddie. I knew it was going to be an emotional show. It was quite an emotional show, but it was a real good show to watch. The highlight for me was undoubtedly the Rey Mysterio-Shawn Michaels match. That was just a real good match between two of the all-time greats, no doubt. And, you know, you could feel the emotion in that match, especially from Rey at the end as he was celebrating getting the win. And looking back at that Rey and Shawn match, they only wrestled twice. In singles matches, they only wrestled twice, and then they had, you know, little encounter in the Survivor Series 2005 Team Raw vs. Team SmackDown match. But looking back at that, I say to myself, you know, it's a shame we never got to see a Rey Mysterio Shawn Michaels dream match on a big stage like WrestleMania. And speaking of Shawn Michaels and WrestleMania, Eddie was supposed to wrestle Shawn at WrestleMania 22. And it's a shame we never got that match, because that match would have been just an incredible, incredible match between two all-time greats. And, you know, a lot of, like, a few of the tributes that stuck out to me during that show were Chris Benoit's Memories of Eddie. I remember Batista coming out on SmackDown in a lowrider with the World Heavyweight Championship, and he said that he said something along the lines of, like, he doesn't want to sound selfish, but he'd give everything up just to have Eddie back. And you know, that was quite a heartfelt tribute right there. I remember Chavo coming out, having a match with JBL and beating JBL with the Frog Splash, which I thought, you know, was very fitting, because the Frog Splash was Eddie's, you know, finishing move. And it was great to see Chavo after that match go back to being Chavo Guerrero, because if you remember at the time, he had that Kerwin White gimmick, and I hated that gimmick. You know, all due respect to Chavo, I just was not feeling that gimmick. And I think the only good thing to come out of what happened, and I only mean good thing because of this, was, you know, that Chavo dropped that gimmick and he went back to being Chavo Guerrero. He went on to honor Eddie's legacy and memory, and Rey would do the same, you know, by using the Frog Splash and using some of Eddie's moves. Like I said, all due respect to Chavo, I just was not a fan of the Kerwin White gimmick, and I was happy to see Chavo go back to being Chavo Guerrero and pay his respects and tribute to his late great uncle. I remember Triple H and Chris Benoit had a real good match that night, and I remember Triple H, when he got on the turnbuckle to do his signature pose, he was telling the fans, you know what, this isn't about me, it's about this man right here, because he was wearing an Eddie Guerrero wristband. That's something that always sticks out to me. The two Eddie Guerrero tribute specials were great. You know, I enjoyed them because it wasn't about the storylines going on. It wasn't about the feuds or whatnot. It was about honoring Eddie Guerrero, somebody who a lot of the wrestlers in WWE and throughout the world have grown to respect, you know, and love because of who he is. And one of my favorite pieces of Eddie merchandise is this DVD right here, Cheating, Death, Stealing Life, the Eddie Guerrero story. The documentary, you know, is only about 45 minutes, but it's a great documentary for a 45-minute piece, because it mainly focuses on Eddie overcoming the demons that, you know, nearly ended his life. He was on top of the world as a wrestler. You know, he made a name for himself in Mexico, Japan, ECW, WCW, and then he got to WWF, which is now WWE. And everything seemed, you know, he seemed to be on top of the world. But then he had demons, you know, battles with alcohol and drug addiction. And, you know, he was on the top of the world, and then it all fell apart, unfortunately. And the documentary is just a great testament to the changes that Eddie made in his life, you know, and how he managed to cheat death, literally, because he was in a car accident that could have taken his life. He OD'd, I believe, if I heard right in the documentary, and almost died from that. You know, he literally cheated death multiple times, and he managed to bounce back. He managed to, you know, start new, you know, and he was a born-again Christian, just like Shawn Michaels. And I remember Shawn Michaels talking about his greatest memories of Eddie weren't necessarily in the ring, but they were their faith in God, their religion, their love for God and being born again Christians. So, you know, the documentary, like I said, is a great testament to Eddie overcoming all these demons and making it back to the top and eventually becoming the WWE champion. You know, and that is quite a moment when he beat Brock Lesnar at No Way Out 2004, because it was here in my hometown of San Francisco at the Cow Palace, and it was an emotional match, but that was the ultimate culmination of everything Eddie had been working hard for, from the time he returned to WWE in 2002 to the time that he stepped in the ring with Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship in 2004, and to win it in front of his family and in front of, you know, that jam-packed crowd in the Cow Palace, because San Francisco does have a strong Latino population. So for Eddie to do it in front of his raza, for his raza, for his family, his friends, was emotional, and he was deserving of it. It was great. The match itself was great and emotional, and you know, that right there was the defining moment of Eddie Guerrero's career. And like I said, guys, there's no format to this. You know, I'm sharing with you my thoughts on, you know, Eddie's passing, what my reaction was when I found out about it, and you know, I will share my favorite Eddie memories, favorite Eddie matches, and then since I'm doing this live, I'm gonna go to the YouTube video and see if any of you guys left me questions. Feel free to leave me questions. Feel free to tweet me questions during this live stream at Robbie1Kenobi, just like it's spelled on my YouTube channel. And if there are any questions, I will gladly answer them. And feel free to share your favorite Eddie moments and matches in either the comments down below, the live stream comment box, or tweet them to me using the hashtag RIP, or use the hashtag Remembering Eddie. Yeah, use the hashtag Remembering Eddie, so then I know that these are questions or tweets, comments directed toward this video. So when I think of favorite Eddie memories, I immediately think of the Los Guerreros vignettes, because those were some of the funniest things I had seen in WWE. Of course, Eddie and Chavo's Los Guerreros, they were a great tag team, they were family, and the vignettes were just really funny. And Chavo even said it, that they took something that started off as a joke, you know, the whole light sheet steel thing, and it caught on with the fans, and the fans loved it, and they took it from there. That whole light sheet steel gimmick skyrocketed. When it comes down to the vignettes, it's a tie in terms of my favorite between the parking valet one, and the pool party. I'm sorry, and I was just laughing thinking about those two vignettes, because they're just great. The valet one, I think I might have to lean more toward that one as my favorite, because it's just funny. If you guys haven't seen it, you should look it up. It is on the Cheating, Death, Stealing Life DVD. But to sum it up, basically, Eddie and Chavo are out in Miami, I think. I think they're in Miami or LA. I'm not sure, but they're hitting the streets. You know, they're talking about picking up mamacitas. And Chavo's in the camera. He's talking to the camera. He's saying, "We're gonna teach you how to get a new car for no money down until 2000 and never, Holmes." And I just love that. I just love it. And then they go up to this random valet, and they're like, you know, like, "What's up, Besse? What's up? Hey, when are you gonna call my sister, man? When are you gonna take my sister out?" And the guy's like, "Yo, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know your sister." Now, obviously, we know he doesn't know the sister, but this is how the Guerreros play. You know, they lie, they cheat, they steal, but at least they're honest about it. So yeah, Eddie's like, "Oh, what? You don't remember my sister?" He's like, "Would you say my sister's not good enough for you, SA?" And then the guy's like, hey, I don't want any trouble, SAs. And then they're like, "Oh, it's an SA thing, eh? I think he's making fun of the way we talk, SA Chavito." I could pretty much do the whole freaking vignette right now. It's just so funny. And then like Eddie grabs the guy by the collar of his jacket. And he's like, "You messed with the wrong Chicano," and the guy just runs literally out of his jacket. And Eddie's got the jacket. He puts it on. And this guy in this real nice car pulls up, and Eddie's like, "You know, thank you for driving. You know, thank you for I don't remember what he says, like leaving your car with us or something." He's like, "Thank you for choosing our establishments." And the guy's like, "Yo, take care of my baby. It's brand new." And Eddie's like, "Hey, I'll treat her like the owner." You know, and then the guy's like, "Hey, wait, you guys are those Mexican wrestlers on TV." And Eddie and Chavo, like, they stop for a minute, like, no, I'm sorry, man, you got us confused. You know, we're other wrestlers, but we all look alike. And then he's like, yeah, go get some good food, man. There's some good food here. And then they get off in the car. And I think Chavo says something with like, with a little ingenuity, a little Guerrero ingenuity, you can make it quite far in life. And Eddie's like, remember, we take plastic too. Like they took the guy's wallet. So I think that has to be my favorite Los Guerreros vignette because of everything they accomplished in just that 1 3-minute vignette, you know. But the pool party one is funny too because they pretend they're like some environmentalists from the community of Santa Maria or Santo Domingo. I'm not sure. It was he may have made that name up. I'm not sure, but it was just funny. They go to this old lady's house. They say they're gonna inspect the pool just to make sure it's not like leaking or it's got like any chemicals that could lead to global warming and stuff like that. And then before you know it, they're throwing a freaking pool party in the ladies' pool, and it was just funny. I mean, that was Eddie and Chavo at their best. And Eddie and Chavo, of course, had great matches. You know, as a tag team. You know, they were part of SmackDown 6 with Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio and Guerrero. Rey Mysterio and Edge, excuse me. And yeah, I mean, that led to the Survivor Series Triple Threat Elimination Tag Team Championship match. That was a real good match. And of course, that was when Eddie and Chavo won the tag team titles. Real good match. And from there, they would hold on to the titles until January, I believe, when they lost it to Team Angle. But yeah, you know, Eddie and Chavo, Lie, Cheat, Steal, that gimmick was great. And like I said, as a tag team, they had some great matches. Fans wanted to see Eddie cheat. They loved when Eddie would like grab the title. Didn't matter what title it was. He was gonna like pretend to hit his opponent, but then he would throw it to the opponent, and he would pretend like he would, you know, point to the ref like, "Oh, the guy hit me, he hit me," you know. And Eddie would, you know, he'd tell the fans to be quiet, or like when he would grab a steel chair, he'd hit the floor, he'd hit the mat with it, and then he'd lie down and pretend he got knocked out with a chair or something, you know, and he would tell the fans to be quiet. You know, that stuff was great. Eddie was great as not only a wrestler but a showman as well. He was a great entertainer in the ring. And speaking of great Eddie moments and Los Guerreros, I also remember Eddie dressing up as Zorro for Halloween in 2002, and he said he was going to carve a Z on Kurt Angle's gold medal because he had a match with Kurt Angle that night. And then later in the show, he's saying he's trying to get a tag team title match from Stephanie McMahon, who was his general manager at that time. And he's like, hey, Steph, you know, after I go out there and I beat Kurt Angle, me and Chavito, me and Chavo. And Steph had no idea what they were saying. And Eddie's like, we want a shot at the tag team championships. And then Stephanie said she would think about it. And she told Eddie, why don't you get ready for your match? And Chavo was trying to get Eddie pumped, and Eddie was just a Zorro. So Eddie's like, Zorro's always ready. I just love it. You know, like I said, Eddie was a great entertainer. And when I think back of other great Eddie moments, I remember his little partnership with China, his on-screen relationship with China, Latino Heat and Mamacita. And you know, that's probably one thing that, like, on paper it didn't look like it was gonna do much. That didn't look like much on paper, but then when you saw it come to life on screen, Eddie and China made it work, you know. And I love Backlash 2000 when Eddie had to defend the European Championship against S.A. Rios, and he was coming from a prom. I don't ever remember someone's prom being on a Sunday, but that's just the genius of Eddie Guerrero. So basically, Eddie and China go to the prom on Sunday, the same Sunday night as Backlash, and then Eddie has to come back and wrestle S.A. Rios in his prom tuxedo with the European Championship on the line. That was priceless. I mean, I don't think you'll ever see that again in WWE. I mean, that was during the Attitude Era, and that was during, you know, a great time in wrestling, and that was a great time to be a wrestling fan. And, you know, Eddie made it work. I loved it. I just, looking back at it, like, who in their right mind goes to their prom and then comes back to wrestle and defend the European Championship? Well, Eddie Guerrero does, and you know what? Eddie Guerrero did it because Eddie's a G. Straight up. Trying to think now about some more favorite Eddie memories, because a lot of my favorite Eddie memories come from WWE. I did watch some of his work in WCW. I never watched any of his work in ECW. but I do want to with the WWE Network available. Yeah, so you guys, excuse me if every once in a while I pause for a moment because I'm just trying to remember a good Eddie match or memory. And like I said, I don't remember much of Eddie's best moments in WCW in terms of moments. I know he had great matches with Ray. I mean, Halloween Havoc 1997, that's one of my favorite matches, and that's one of the best cruiserweight matches in WCW history. Not only did that match, in my opinion, really set the bar for cruiserweights, like take the cruiserweight division to another level, but that match was voted Match of the Year by the readers of WCW magazine. So for two cruiserweights to go out there, and they're usually the mid card, you know. So for two cruiserweights to go out there and put on a match that gains recognition as Match of the Year, that's quite an accomplishment. And that's a testament to both Eddie and Ray as two of the best cruiserweights of their generation, two of the best cruiserweights of all time. That match was great. That match was just, you know, incredible. You had the whole mask versus title stipulation, Eddie trying to rip at Ray's mask to expose his face for the very first time, and Ray just putting on some incredible, you know, just pulling off some incredible spots that that flip springboard into a DDT. I mean, that was incredible. And then he does the flip over the top rope into a Hurricane Rana on the outside, and he rammed Eddie into the steel, into the guardrail. So that was just incredible. And then I also saw their match at World War III 1987, their rematch for the Cruiserweight Championship, which is on Ray's Biggest Little Man DVD. And I don't think that match gets talked a lot about. Talked about a lot, excuse me. But I thought that was a really good Cruiserweight Championship match. It's not better than the Halloween Havoc 97 match, of course, but it was still another real good Cruiserweight Championship match, another real good Eddie and Ray match in WCW. And of course, Eddie and Ray went on to have some great classic matches in WWE. I do remember, though, in the build-up to that Ray and Eddie match at Halloween Havoc, that Ray or Eddie stole Ray's mask in the midst of a match with Dean Malenko, and as he was walking away, he's like, missing something. It was just, that was great. You know, that was some of Eddie's best work as a heel. Eddie, babyface or heel, he's great, but I think Eddie did a lot. I think Eddie did some of his best work as a heel, because he just could play the bad guy that you wanted to hate. You know, he played that bad guy that you wanted to boo and that you wanted to see get his butt kicked, you know. And again, that's another testament to Eddie as an entertainer. You know, Eddie as a heel in 2005, man, that was some great work. And that was some intense heel he gained. I mean, when he turned his back on Ray and he assaulted him and he gave him that brainbuster on the steel stairs, and then he did that promo where he took the Ray mask out and he just was yelling at it like, why did you make me do this? You know, you made me do this. I think that was definitely some of Eddie's best work in the last stages of his career. The Eddie Ray feud from 2005 was just great. I mean, they had some great matches, and that feud, that whole notion that Eddie couldn't beat Ray was just, man, that was incredible. I don't know if you'll ever get a feud like that in WWE now. You know, Ray and Eddie's opening match at WrestleMania 21 when they were both tag team champions, for the first time ever, tag team champions going against each other, that was a hell of an opener. One of my favorite matches, one of the best WrestleMania openers of all time. That match got that crowd pumped. And, you know, it was a shame that that match was not included in WrestleMania, in the 30 years of WrestleMania mode in WWE 2K14, because that match was just an incredible opener. And that ultimately started the whole, well, that was one of the key moments in the whole Ray and Eddie feud, and the whole notion that Eddie couldn't beat Ray. That match, I loved it. You know, and like I said, it's a shame that that match, Ray versus Eddie from WrestleMania 21, excuse me, wasn't featured in 30 years of WrestleMania mode in 2K14. It would have been cool if there was like DLC and that was included with 2K14, or if that was part of the 2K14 DLC season pass where you could have gotten some bonus matches, including Eddie versus Ray, that match deserved to be on 30 Years of WrestleMania mode in 2K14. Now you know, this is just my thoughts. I don't want to sound like a complaint or anything. I'm just saying I thought that match should have been on there. But yeah, Eddie and Ray at Judgment Day was a great match. Then they had a match on SmackDown, which is also on the Ray Mysterio Biggest Little Man DVD. That was a great match. I mean, wow. I really got into that match when I saw it. And then they had the ladder match for the custody of Dominic. Now, my only complaint, so to speak, my only pet peeve, no. The only thing I wasn't really a fan of in that whole Eddie versus Ray feud for the custody of Dominic was that Eddie revealed that he was Dominic's father. We all know Ray is Dominic's biological father. And when you do something like that, it's like, why? Like, I know it was to further enhance the feud and it got more heel heat on Eddie, but it's just like, what they could have done was they could have tried to have like Eddie brainwash Dominic, like, you know, the whole segment of Eddie visiting Dominic on the playground, and, you know, just, you know, catching up with him and saying that Eddie, you know, telling Dominic that he's got a bedtime story for him that he'll never forget because Dominic loves bedtime stories. Like, that was a great way to initiate that portion of the feud. But then the whole, like, Eddie revealing himself to be Dominic's father. The only reason why I wasn't for it was because, like I said, we all know that Dominic is Ray's biological son. Ray is Dominic's biological father. So, like I said, what they could have done was they could have made it to where, like, Dominic is being turned against Ray. And Eddie could be like, well, who's your real father? Is he your real father? Has he really been there for you all these years? Or am I your father? Am I your papi? And of course, that coined that shirt that was out for a few months. How long was that out for? Well, anyway, it coined that popular Eddie shirt, I'm your papi. But yeah, I think that's just how they should have done the whole Ray and Eddie feud over the custody of Dominic. They could have been like, you know, you could have had Eddie like manipulate Dominic and have him think that, you know, Ray's not your real father. Ray hasn't been there for you as much as I've been there for you. And he could have told him all these bedtime stories that could have made Dominic really think like, oh, you know, my real father's this bad man, but I think this is my real father. I think they could have done it like that. You know, like I said, these are not complaints. I don't want them to sound like complaints. This is just me. This is just me expressing my, you know, opinions on certain things. That's it. I'm not trying to sound negative because this video is all about positivity and honoring, you know, Eddie Guerrero's legacy. So yeah, I did enjoy their feud. Their feud was great. Ladder match had some great storytelling in it. There were some botches, but I mean, that ladder match, just like I said, had great storytelling. You know, Vicky Guerrero getting involved and some of the spots they did, just incredible, you know. And another one of my favorite Eddie matches that I don't think a lot of people talk about was Eddie versus Chris Benoit from ECW One Night Stand 2005. Not a lot of people talk about this match, and this isn't the greatest match they've had together because you would expect a little better from them. I still thought it was a really good match, and it's kind of bittersweet too because that was one of Eddie's last pay-per-view matches. His very last match was against Batista at No Mercy 2005, but the one with Benoit was one of his last matches prior to his unexpected passing. But I still thought they put on a really good technical wrestling match, and they were two of the standout technical wrestlers in ECW. You know, it's unfortunate that we never got to see an Eddie Guerrero Chris Benoit world title feud. That would have been great, but we did get a great match between them at Vengeance in 2003 for the United States Championship, and it would have been cool if we saw a Benoit Eddie best of 5 or best of 7 series from there, because, you know, you had Rhino get involved. He speared Chris Benoit, and then Eddie had turned on to Jerry at that time when they lost the tag team championships to the World Greatest Tag Team, and that planted the seeds for the Fatal 4-Way at SummerSlam. But I think it would have been great if they did an Eddie and Benoit best of 7 series for the United States Championship and have Eddie come out on top. You know, it could have been a very close series, 3 falls, you know, 3 victories each. Finish it in No Mercy or Survivor Series. Well, obviously you can't finish it at Well, no, I'm talking about Survivor Series 2003. Yeah, finish at No Mercy 2003 or Survivor Series 2003. That would have been great, you know. And then hey, whether Eddie is a face or a heel, him and Benoit embrace, and that would have been great, you know. 'Cause I thought Eddie had a nice run as United States champion. And he was a dual champion too. When he and Chavo reunited, they beat the world's greatest tag team for the tag team titles, and Eddie was United States champion at the time. So I don't recall anyone else being United States champion and tag team champion at the same time. But once again, another great Los Guerreros moment. And going back to Benoit, I can't forget the emotional ending of WrestleMania 20. Eddie is world champion, WWE champion, and Benoit is world champion. And both of them just, you know, emotional, tears of joy, hugging, embracing each other in the middle of the ring, celebrating with their respective titles in Madison Square Garden, of all places. Great moment. And it's a shame. It's unfortunate that Eddie's not with us anymore, and that Benoit's no longer with us anymore. And we all know the whole circumstances behind why Benoit's not here anymore. And it's sad. You know, it's a shame that two great technical wrestlers are no longer with us. But what matters is the moments we remember, the moments we cherish of their careers. And Eddie and Benoit, you know, as a matter of fact, give me 1 minute. I hate to leave like this in a moment, but I'm going to bring you guys something. Here it is. Alright guys, I apologize for that. I didn't mean to leave you so abruptly, but this is another one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia. The SmackDown, the issue of SmackDown magazine, the collector's issue with the highlights of WrestleMania 20 and the 2004 Hall of Fame, and right there on the cover, Chris Benoit with the World Championship, Eddie Guerrero with the WWE Championship. So I mean, I'm not trying to think negative. I don't want this to sound somber or anything, or put people in a bad mood to those who are watching it right now. But yeah, it's a shame they're gone, but that's undoubtedly one of the greatest moments of their career. And Eddie's match with Kurt Angle, great match at WrestleMania 20. I don't think a lot of people talk about it though. I think it's one of those WrestleMania hidden gems, and it's a great match with a great finish. You know, Eddie faking an ankle injury, untying his boot, faking an ankle injury, and then Kurt Angle going right for the ankle, going for the ankle lock. Eddie rolls out, boot slips off Eddie's foot. Eddie rolls Kurt up, 1, 2, 3, and Kurt Angle is pissed that Eddie cheated to beat him for the to retain the WWE Championship. But it was classic Eddie. Eddie will always be remembered for lying, cheating, and stealing. But hey, he was honest about it at least. Yeah, you know, just great. Just a lot of great memories, you know, from Eddie. A lot of great moments and memories that Eddie left behind. I have quite a few, you know, from his WWE run. Him spraying Big Show with a sewage hose. That was pretty nasty. But I don't think you'll never see something like that again. I mean, it's been done before. It's been done in recent years, different times, in a different way, but the way Eddie did it was great. I mean, him on the top of that sewage truck, showering Big Show in sewage. I mean, priceless. That was priceless. And then the Lexman and Preston mentioned a moment that I was going to mention, but I can't remember what it was. Oh, the 2005 Royal Rumble. Two great Eddie moments in one match. First off, well, one was pre-Royal Rumble match. The other was during the match. The moment where he steals Ric Flair's number. He and Ric Flair are drawing numbers in the Royal Rumble, for the Royal Rumble, and Eddie draws a bad number, which ends up being number 1. Ric Flair draws number 30. Rick and Eddie still have that respect for each other. Even though Flair is heel, he's with Evolution, Eddie's babyface, they still have respect for each other. They give each other a hug. Eddie steals Ric Flair's number. Ric Flair goes irate. And then uh, Teddy Long has to call Eddie into his office. And he's like, Eddie, give me the number. And then Eddie's like, what number? Like, your phone number? You know, he's like, Eddie, I'm not playing around. I'm trying to keep things, order. I got no time for these games. I know you took Ric Flair's number. And then Evolution bust in. And they are irate. And Triple H is like, cough it up, jumping bean. And I'm like, and I'm looking back like, wow, like he actually said that. And I remember Eddie's like, oh, okay, I see. Because, yeah, the whole racial slur, jumping bean, but that was great. And then as Eddie is leaving after giving Ric Flair his as Eddie's leaving, and he's giving Ric Flair's number back, Teddy Long stops and he's like, Eddie, and he holds his hand out, and then Eddie reveals that he has Ric Flair's wallet, and Ric Flair's like, my wallet, my wallet. He just goes irate again. It was just great. I mean, those are the great memories that Eddie left behind. Eddie, I've said this before. I know I've said this like 3 times now, I think. Eddie was a great athlete, great wrestler, and a great entertainer too. I mean, that was I'm laughing thinking about it. How irate Ric Flair was when Eddie stole his number and then stole his wallet. I mean, that was priceless. That was true Eddie Guerrero fashion. I loved it. And then in the Royal Rumble match, Eddie comes out number 1. Who comes out number 2? Chris Benoit. One of the best starts to a Royal Rumble match ever, because you have 2 great technical wrestlers going at it in one of the biggest matches in wrestling history, the Royal Rumble, because we all know of the legacy the Royal Rumble leaves behind, how significant it is of a match. And to have them start off for the first 2 minutes, that was great. They went at it, And I love how Eddie tried to, like, eliminate Benoit at certain times. I believe they eliminated the Hurricane, and then Eddie, like, tries to come right up behind Benoit, sneak right up behind him and dump him. And Benoit holds on, and Benoit turns around, like, so fast. He looks at Eddie like, oh, you just better watch it. Like, I know you try to screw me over. You better watch it, because I won't hesitate to dump you over. It was just great, That start was great. And looking back at it, I would have loved if Chris Jericho would have been number 3 in that match. And then you have 3 of the great technical wrestlers of their generation in the Royal Rumble match. That would have been great. I think Eddie did something else. Like, I know he was responsible for Booker T getting eliminated, because Eddie pulled the rope down when Ray dropkicked Booker, and Booker went over the top. And I think Booker and Eddie had a little tag team at that time. So that was cool. But of course, Eddie and Ray, they made a great tag team. Another one of my favorite matches is their match at No Way Out against the Basham Brothers for the tag team championships. Like I said, guys, this is not going in any particular order. These memories and matches just come as they come to me off the top of my head. I'm just gonna, share them with you. So Eddie and Ray against the Bashams, good tag team match. And I love how Ray prevented Eddie from trying to cheat and getting their team disqualified. But in the end, they ended up cheating to win the tag team championships. And Eddie and Ray, they were like a dream team, I know Preston was, like, blown away because he's a major Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero fan. So to see those 2 join forces, that was huge for him. I believe it was also huge for Deluxe Man, because he loves Eddie Guerrero. To me, that was great, because Ray's one of my all-time favorites, and Eddie's one of the best technical wrestlers. I know I've been saying this throughout the whole video, but it's true. So, to see that happen, to see that tag team come together was great, and it led to a great feud between the 2. Starting off with that, that champion versus champion match at WrestleMania 21, which is still one of my favorite WrestleMania matches to this day. Yeah, and then, Eddie, I'm trying to think. I remember Eddie and Ray had a tag title match prior to their feud with Eminem, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, some other Eddie Guerrero matches in WWE that stand out to me. Definitely Eddie and Edge, the No DQ match from SmackDown in 2002. I mean, those guys did some crazy, crazy spots in that match. The power bomb from the top of the ladder, the execution from off the top of the ladder, Eddie laying Edge on the ladder and doing the helo over the top rope onto the ladder. I know one of those moves was responsible for messing up Edge's neck. I don't remember which one, but it might have been the power bomb or it might have been the execution. It might have been the power bomb because he's the one that took the brunt of that power bomb. But yeah, that match was great. Eddie and Kurt Angle, of course, at WrestleMania 20, like I mentioned, I think that's a hidden gem of a WrestleMania match. Eddie and RVD, the two masters of the Frog Splash, had a great ladder match, you know, that involved the interference from that one fan that Eddie was ready to fight straight up because the fan knocked Eddie off the ladder. But still, Eddie and RVD had a great ladder match. They also had a couple real good matches at the pay-per-views Backlash and Judgment Day of that year, 2002. Eddie had a match with Kurt Angle, I believe. Not the SmackDown match I mentioned, but I'm trying to remember this other match Eddie had with Kurt Angle that was really good. I do remember Eddie beating Chris Jericho for the European Championship the night after WrestleMania 2000 when the whole Latino Heat Mamacita storyline began because Jericho was friends with China. China had a feud with Eddie, and then China betrayed Jericho to help Eddie win the European Championship. So that was cool. The whole Latino Heat Mamacita storyline was great. Like I said, the prom, Eddie and China going to the prom and then having to go back to and then having to wrestle at Backlash that same night. Priceless, classic Eddie. Yeah, Eddie's parking lot brawl with John Cena. That was a real fun match to watch because you weren't expecting a classic. It was a brawl with cars surrounding them like an octagon. It was just a fun match to watch. And I remember John Cena, how intense he was before the match because he had a chain in his hands. He was asking the referee, could I do this, that, and this to Eddie? And when he found out he could do pretty much whatever, he was ready to just kick the crap out of Eddie. They had a good feud in 2003. It would have been cool if it had a pay-per-view blow-off match, especially when Cena was starting to get red hot with the crowd. Could you have imagined Eddie Guerrero in his prime, you know, red hot versus John Cena red hot in his prime? That would have been awesome. You know, just thinking about it. Excuse me. And Eddie, excuse me. And yeah, you know, that's pretty much it, guys. As I look back at like my favorite Eddie matches, you know, if another one pops up in the top of my mind, I'll definitely mention it. Remember, like I said, guys, there's no format to hold this whole thing. Everything's just coming off the top of my head. Live stream, just sharing my thoughts with you guys about Eddie. And I do have one viewer. Thank you to whoever's watching. I don't know how long this is gonna go, guys. So just for those of you watching, kick back, enjoy the ride, and just just enjoy those memories of Eddie. But if you do excuse me, real quick, I have to excuse me. Sorry, I'm doing something right now for the live stream, so I'm trying to. Oh, there you go. I will be right back if you give me 1 minute. Uh-oh. I'm still live. Sorry, guys. I thought I lost the stream for some moment. I will be right back. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I didn't even have any audio. So I apologize. This is my first live stream of this caliber. I do apologize for leaving abruptly. But I do hope you guys are still enjoying the live stream. So right now, I want to look back at like Eddie in November 2005 and what I think he would have done in 2006, 2007, and maybe 2008 if he had decided to wrestle. So if you guys remember, in 2005, Eddie was supposed to be on Team SmackDown. It was supposed to be him, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, JBL, and Team Captain Batista versus Team Captain Shawn Michaels, Carlito, The Big Show, Chris Masters, and Kane, Team Raw. But of course, because of Eddie's passing, he was unable to compete in the match, so they replaced him with Randy Orton. I wonder, though, what would have happened had Eddie been with Team SmackDown. I know Eddie was supposed to win the World Heavyweight Championship. He was supposed to beat Batista and Randy Orton in a triple threat match on SmackDown, and he was going to be the World Heavyweight Champion for a short time. He might have entered Survivor Series as World Heavyweight Champion, and that would have been cool. You know, Eddie would have been one of those few to win both the WWE and World Heavyweight Championship. Well, other guys, I mean, like Triple H and Shawn Michaels and Brock. I could say Brock Lesnar and Batista and Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. They've all won the WWE Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship in different points of their career. So he wouldn't have been like one of few, but there are guys who have done it before. Alberto Del Rio, John Cena, Chris Jericho. But anyway, that would have been cool to see Eddie win the World Heavyweight Championship. And then, like I said, he was supposed to have a match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 22, which that would have been incredible. Shawn and Eddie on the grandest stage. It's a shame we never got that match. Now, I wonder who Eddie would have dropped the title to. Now, rumor has it that Kurt Angle was supposed to defend the World Heavyweight Championship against The Undertaker at WrestleMania 22. So I'm assuming Kurt would have gone to SmackDown. He would have challenged Eddie. He would have beaten Eddie. And then Undertaker would have gotten a shot for the World Heavyweight Championship. But then where does that leave Rey Mysterio? Would Rey have still won the Royal Rumble? Or would he have gotten the world title later in 2006? It begs the question. It leaves you wondering what would have happened. What would have been cool is if Eddie won the world title, held on to it till WrestleMania, and then Rey won the Royal Rumble, and they main evented WrestleMania 22. You could have continued the Rey and Eddie feud, and then that could have been Rey's time to win the championship. I mean, what an honor and what a moment it would have been for Rey to wrestle his best friend, you know, his brother, his family, familia, blood, whatever you want to call him, and beat him for the championship. I'm sure Eddie would have been honored to pass the belt down to Rey had it happened at WrestleMania 22. That would have just been incredible for Eddie to wrestle Rey. Rey beats Eddie for the title. Rey goes on to have a nice run. And then, Eddie probably could have gone for the WWE title. He probably could have jumped to Raw and gone after John Cena. Because, like I said, that a feud between them and the state that they were in terms of how popular they were with the fans, their popularity would have been huge. Or maybe it's just Eddie Guerrero versus Edge reigniting that feud, but this time for the WWE Championship. Wow, that would have been amazing. Or Eddie versus RVD for the WWE or ECW Championship. And I remember asking, I sent a question to We Are Pro Wrestling. He's doing a live Q&A later tonight in honor of Eddie Guerrero. So for you guys watching, make sure to go check out We Are Pro Wrestling's channel and hit him up on Twitter as well. Follow him on Twitter and send him your questions regarding Eddie Guerrero. But I sent him a question earlier today about, does he think Eddie would have wrestled in WWE's reinstated, so to speak, ECW brand in 2006 and 2007? I personally don't know. Maybe because he was an ECW alumnus. And he was one of the standout stars in ECW. You know, ECW, while they were known for blood, guts, hardcore violence, they were also known for great technical wrestling. And the guys that made that brought that technical wrestling to the forefront of ECW were Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Dean Malenko. So I would think maybe Eddie would have gone to ECW, won the ECW championship from the Big Show, which would have been fitting, only because Big Show beat Eddie for the United States Championship, which John Cena went on to win, of course, at WrestleMania 20. And then all of them, Big Show, Eddie, and John, and somebody else, RVD, went on to not main event, but they were part of Team Guerrero at Survivor 2004 against Team Angle. Funny connections, huh? Big Show beats Cena, or Big Show beats Eddie. Cena beats Big Show. They're all on the same team at Survivor Series 2004. And then, what happened after that? And then, like, Eddie, yeah, that's kind of funny, because then if Eddie and Ray, not Eddie and Ray, Eddie and RVD had a feud for the title, it's sort of like that 6 degrees of separation kind of thing, you know? But yeah, who would I have liked to have seen Eddie wrestle between 2006 and 2007? Because I probably think by 2008 he might have retired, or 2009 at the latest. But I would have loved to have seen, you know, I wonder if they were ever going to want to do Undertaker versus Eddie Guerrero with the streak on the line at WrestleMania. That would have been cool, you know, because just because, you know, it's Eddie Guerrero and The Undertaker. I don't ever recall him wrestling one-on-one. Now, what's funny is that, funny in a coincidental sense, like for what happened was, when the SmackDown versus Raw 2006 game came out, I remember there was controversy because there was a storyline in the game where Undertaker put Eddie Guerrero in a coffin. I didn't hear about it until recently. I never played that storyline in the game. But I'm sure that was, I mean, WWE had no idea Eddie was going to pass shortly before the game got released. So you know that's not WWE's fault. That was just a storyline. But thinking about it, like Undertaker versus Eddie Guerrero would have been good. Would have been a cool match to see just because of their styles and their personalities. I mean, it's Eddie Guerrero versus The Undertaker. And I would have loved to have seen Undertaker did a promo where he's like, you know, Eddie, I know you lie, cheat, and steal, but you can't lie, cheat, and steal. You can't cheat death. You can't steal a life. To take a phrase from the DVD and the book that was written about Eddie's life. But that just would have been cool to see if Undertaker did a promo like that against Eddie. I'm sure he wouldn't have made it personal against Eddie, but being that Undertaker is the dead man, he probably would have said, like, you can't cheat death and you won't steal life, like something like that. Eddie Guerrero and CM Punk would have definitely been a real good match. And Eddie and CM Punk have actually wrestled each other on the indies. They did a triple threat match with Rey Mysterio. I do not remember what the indie promotion was, who they were, but there was a match where Eddie Guerrero wrestled CM Punk and Rey Mysterio in a triple threat match. If I can find it online, I want to see it. That would have been incredible, you know, because of the caliber of performers they are. I remember a few years ago when WWE All Stars came out, and it was the whole present versus the past, like current superstars versus legends. I was doing this like WrestleMania All Stars. I had this idea for a WrestleMania All Stars dream match card where I would have taken the legends from the game versus the current stars in the game. So it was around the same time the game came out. And I wanted to do Eddie Guerrero versus Alberto Del Rio. And Del Rio wasn't in the game, but he was still a part of the roster at that time. And the big feud, the big storyline I had for this feud was Del Rio being the honorable man because he drives the fancy cars and everything, versus Eddie Guerrero, who lies, cheats, and steals. That would have been an incredible feud just because of that alone. You could have had Alberto come out and call Eddie a dog, you know, stuff like that, because he's not a real man, because he lies and cheats and steals. Alberto Del Rio is a man of destiny. He's a man of honor. You know, I have all these nice things and whatnot because I'm a man of honor. You're just, you know, a little peasant. You're just a little cockroach, something like that, because you lie, cheat, and steal. That would have been incredible, you guys. Just like the promos they could have cut against each other, and then like Eddie stealing Del Rio's expensive cars and stuff, and then eventually lead to a match between them. Would have been incredible, you know, like I said. I know a lot of people would have loved to have seen Eddie Guerrero versus Daniel Bryan, or Eddie Guerrero versus Seth Rollins. Undoubtedly, those matches would have been great. Eddie Guerrero versus John Morrison. Yes, they wrestled in the tag team division, you know, MNM versus Eddie and Ray. But I would have loved to have seen Eddie versus Morrison in a singles match. I would have loved to have seen how Morrison would have done against Eddie in a singles as a singles competitor, because Morrison, I think, was one of the best of his generation, and he was very underrated and very underutilized in my opinion. So Eddie versus John Morrison would have just been incredible, you know. Eddie versus Shelton Benjamin. After Shelton got that big solo push and he was just having great matches with Jericho and Christian, that would have been great. Eddie and cause I'm trying to think of the new talent that made it in 2007 and 8 and going back to 6 as well. Sorry. Eddie versus, yeah, Eddie versus MVP, actually, because you know how I met MVP at Halloween Hell, APW Halloween Hell. Eddie versus MVP would have been great. I think MVP is a little underrated. He's been really stepping his game up in recent years, and I know because I saw him live, like I said, at APW Halloween Hell. Yeah, you know, Eddie versus MVP would have been a great match. Eddie versus Jeff Hardy would have been a great match. They had a match actually years ago, but I think Eddie versus Jeff, when Jeff was still doing things big time as a solo star and like getting toward the main event scene, would have been great. Eddie and Carlito. I don't think Eddie and Carlito ever wrestled each other, and they're two of the best Latino wrestlers of their generation. So that would have been great. You know, there were so many matches I would have loved to have seen Eddie Guerrero have if he was still alive. Now, once he retired from WWE, I probably could have seen him as a mentor to a lot of the young talent down at the Performance Center and down in NXT. I could have seen him being like that mentor that comes in and shows him the ropes and tells him about his ups and downs and tells him about what you need to do to make it in this business. What, like, you know, probably talk to him about, you know, cherishing what life gives you, being humble, taking advantage of the opportunities you're given. I could have seen Eddie being one of those mentors down at the Performance Center and NXT, just giving advice to all those young talented stars and women wrestlers down there. And like, I don't want to say being a father figure, but he could have been like a role model to a lot of them. I know he was Sasha Banks' favorite wrestler, huge inspiration to her. I know a few people on here that, excuse me, loved Eddie, including my good friend Mr. Paul JB44. Shout out to him if he's watching. Yeah, and then, you know, Eddie probably would have been in the Hall of Fame by now. If Eddie had retired about 2007, 2008, he probably would have been in the Hall. That's probably when he most likely would have gone to the Hall of Fame. But of course, because of his passing, they put him into the Hall of Fame. Ray dedicated some matches to him. You know, the whole Eddie's not in heaven, Eddie's down there in hell, that went a little too far. That disgusted the Lex man, I know that. And when I heard it the first time, I was like, wow. That's all I really said, but looking back at it, that did go a little too far. That was pretty that was just uncalled for. That was pretty disgusting. I think Randy Orton even said that he didn't want to do it. If I heard Rey Mysterio right on a podcast that Ray did, where they're talking about that. But yeah, they shouldn't have. That shouldn't have been done. You know, Randy could have said something like, "Yeah, you're looking up at heaven, and you're talking about, yo, you had Eddie's spirit and everything, but Eddie can't save you from what I'm gonna do to you." You know, the whole feud they were going into in 2006 for Ray's WrestleMania main event title shot. And I remember JBL said something else about Eddie, but I don't think it crossed the line like Orton's did. But yeah, you know, it's just like I said, it's a shame, you guys, that Eddie's no longer with us, and it's sad that, you know, we'll never know what Eddie could have done had he been alive. What would have happened other than winning the World Heavyweight Championship and wrestling Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 22? What else would Eddie have done with his career? But I do, like I said, have a lot of great memories of Eddie, mainly from his WWE run. But I do have those favorite Eddie matches, those favorite Eddie moments. And, you know, it never hurts to think what could have been had Eddie not passed. So I think that's pretty much it, guys, for just me sharing my thoughts on Eddie Guerrero and honoring his legacy 10 years later. You know, like I said, Eddie, you know, Eddie, one of the greatest of his generation. It's a shame he's no longer with us. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record saying that. But I'll never forget those great memories and matches, you know, that Eddie left behind. I love the Los Guerreros vignettes. I could watch those over and over again and never get tired of them. I might even go back in a little while and watch Eddie steal Ric Flair's number just because how irate Ric Flair was, especially when he realized that his wallet was stolen too. I mean, see, I'm smiling because I'm thinking of all those great Eddie memories. So what I'm gonna do right now is I am going to go to the YouTube portion of this live stream and see if any of you guys left questions, comments, and if not, I'll pretty much end it right there. So if you guys just give me a minute. All right, so I got 4 comments from my good friend Breatha35. So let's take a look at them right now. So Breatha says, my favorite match of Eddie's was the match he had versus Rey Mysterio in WCW. I loved his mullet, his shimmy, and his lowriders. I enjoyed him as a tag team with Chavo when they were tag team champions. Also enjoyed how you would get away with cheating in the finish of a match too. I am happy that he got to be a part of a core group that put SmackDown on the map, became the WWE World Champion. I wasn't too hot on Eddie versus Ray custody storyline where they had the ladder match. One thing I'll remember from that match was Eddie swearing at the refs asking where Vicky was. You know what? I actually think I remember that. I think he was cursing at the refs, asking where the bleep was Vicky, because I think they botched a moment or something. But yeah, you know, I agree with Breatha. I wasn't too big on the whole Eddie being Dominic's biological father, you know, because Ray is obviously Dominic's biological father. Like I said, if they had it to where Eddie was like manipulating Dominic and Dominic was questioning Ray as a father, that I would have been fine with because that's not blurring the lines between reality and what we see on TV. But they made it work, you know. They did what they did. And, you know, Eddie and Ray had a great feud. And, you know, I don't remember much about Eddie being in the LWO. I think it was supposed to take off big as with him as the leader, but then, of course, he got into a car accident that injured him and that sidelined him, so that was scrapped. I do remember Eddie being in the Filthy Animals with Ray and Kidman and Conan. I don't remember if Disco Inferno was in that group with Eddie at the time, but that was quite a colorful group of cruiserweights. And they were all accomplished stars. Ray, of course, Eddie, Kidman, and Conan. So I don't remember much about the Filthy Animals, but I think if I'm correct, and if anybody watching this right now knows, let me know in the comments or in the live chat box. Were Eddie and Ray tag team champions in WCW as part of the Filthy Animals, or was that Ray and Kidman? But still, the Filthy Animals, like, I'm surprised WWE didn't try to do the Filthy Animals on SmackDown with Ray, Eddie, Kidman, and Chavo. That would have been cool. I know Conan won't go to WWE, but Ray, Eddie, Chavo, and Kidman as Filthy Animals would have been cool. I remember Juventud, Psychosis, and Super Crazy coming in as the Mexicals, and I wasn't really feeling that faction. But if they brought in Juvi for the Filthy Animals with Ray, Chavo, Eddie, Kidman, and who's the other person I said? Ray, Hoovy, Chavo, Eddie, and Kim. That would have been cool, straight up, to see them as the filthy animals in WWE, or at least what WWE could have done for the most part. Because the filthy animals had like a kind of magic, I'd say, in WCW, but they were a really colorful group. Let me see. No other comments. I did get a text from, not a text, I did get two tweets from Brito. One was about the LWO. He just sent that question too. I don't remember much about it, except that they were the Latino version of the NWO, and I think they had a lot of members who were masked luchadors. I don't remember much about the LWO though. But who would I have loved to have seen Eddie have a match with today? That was another question Brito sent me. Cesaro, hands down, Cesaro. Could you imagine like Eddie going for a helo and Cesaro catching him and throwing him up in the air, boom, hitting him with a European uppercut? That would have been insane. But still, they would have had an incredible match. I said Eddie versus Seth Rollins would have been great. Eddie versus Kofi Kingston, because Kofi is one of the best high flyers of this generation, and he's not doing a lot of high flying lately since he's been with the New Day. And I know the whole idea of the gimmick in the group, and I have no problem with it. I'm just saying I haven't seen Kofi do many high risk moves since joining the New Day, you know. But Eddie versus Kofi would have been incredible. I would have loved it, you know, because I've been a fan of Kofi since his debut in 2008, and I thought he's, like I said, I think he's one of the best high flyers in the business. So Eddie versus Kofi today would have been incredible. Who else? Eddie versus Kevin Owens, because it would have been two of Mr. Paul JB's all-time favorites going at it, but still it would have been an incredible match. Anybody on NXT, Apollo Crews, Sami Zayn, Hideo Itami, Finn Balor, Chad Gable, not Baron Corbin, but Tyler Breeze. Well, he's on the main roster, but anyway, Tyler Breeze, Neville. Any of those guys would have had incredible matches with Eddie Guerrero. Kalisto. I would love to have seen Kalisto have a match with Eddie Guerrero. You know, Eddie versus Sin Cara, who is Hunico now. That would have been a great match. I mentioned Eddie and Del Rio. Not only would have been a great match, but a great feud because of their personalities. Light Sheet Steel versus Mr. Honest Aristocrat. Eddie versus Dolph Ziggler would have been great. Eddie versus Randy Orton would have been great. Eddie versus Cody Rhodes would have been great. Notice I didn't say Stardust because I'm waiting to see Cody Rhodes return. Eddie versus Tyson Kidd would have been great. I'm thinking of a lot of great technical wrestlers who Eddie would have just had classic matches with that I would have loved to have seen happen in today's generation. Eddie versus Pentagon Jr., Eddie versus Prince Puma, you know, aka Ricochet, Eddie versus Cedric Alexander, Eddie versus Moose, Eddie versus Matt Sydal, Eddie versus Jay Briscoe, Eddie versus Drago, Eddie versus Mil Muertes, Eddie versus man, I had that guy's name on my Eddie versus, I said John Morrison, you know, Johnny Mundo, Eddie versus Phoenix, Eddie versus, oh man, I'm thinking of a lot of Lucha Underground stars. Eddie versus Angelico. If Eddie was to go to Lucha Underground and have a match with Ivelisse or Sexy Star, wow, that would have been awesome, because those women will wrestle you. Those women will face the best men and women of their in any corporation, any company, in any organization. So Eddie versus Ivelisse, just because of the nostalgia, so to speak, or just because of the significance of, you know, Ivelisse and Eddie being two great Latino wrestlers, would have been awesome. Eddie versus, man, I'm thinking of a lot of Lucha Underground stars, and I cannot remember, I can't remember some of them though, but like a lot of names I threw out from ROH or Lucha Underground. I'm trying to think other great. Eddie versus Samoa Joe. That would have been a real good match. Eddie versus Christopher Daniels would have been great. Eddie versus AJ Styles. Eddie versus, there was a guy in ROH. I can't remember his name, but he was really good. Eddie versus ACH. That's the guy. ACH. That would have been incredible. And that's pretty much it, guys. I can't really think of other wrestlers I'd like to see Eddie wrestle in today's era. So thank you, Britha, for those questions. I just got another notification on Twitter. Let me check it out. Okay, Britha asked, do I think Vicky would have been an on-screen character if Eddie didn't pass away? Do you think he would still be wrestling? I did answer if I think he'd still be wrestling if he didn't pass away. I think he would have wrestled until 2008 and then retired. Maybe 2009 if he could go. But by 2009, he would have been in his early 40s. So maybe by the time he was 40, he would have retired. But do I think Vicky would have been an on-screen character if he had passed, or he hadn't passed? That's a good question. I really don't know. I really don't know if Eddie would have been, or if Vicky would have been an on-screen character if Eddie hadn't passed. That's a real good question. I really can't answer that one. If she hadn't passed, maybe she might have gotten involved in some storylines. But other than that, I don't know if she would have been the Vicky Guerrero we know on screen had Eddie passed. So yeah, you know, I really can't answer that. I have to go with a simple I'm not sure, because who knows if Vicky would have been an on-screen character whether Eddie had passed or not. So let me check some more questions. Everything still from Britha. All right. That's pretty much it, guys, for tweets and any comments or questions in the chat box. And if you guys have any more questions, comments, or want to tweet me, I'll leave it open for like maybe the next 2-3 minutes. Other than that, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me for this live stream. You know, as I honor Eddie Guerrero, you know, 10 years later. Thank you, Britha, for the tweets. Well, I'll leave it open, like I said, for a couple more minutes. Just gonna try and think of any more great Eddie moments or matches that off the top of my head before I bring this to an end. But if you stayed with me, if you watched this whole live stream from the time I started at like 4 o'clock to now, thank you very much. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you tuning into the product. Yeah, so let's see if anybody else left any questions. No more tweets, no more comments. That's pretty much it, you guys. That's pretty much it for questions, comments, and tweets. So I think I'm going to end it right here. So like I said, I just want to thank everybody who, if you tuned into this live stream and you watched it all the way around, you know, from beginning to end, thank you very much. Like I said, I appreciate the support. And to those of you who do watch this later after it's uploaded onto YouTube, thank you as always for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I just got one more Twitter notification, so let's see. Can we get, this is from Britha, can we get an Eddie impersonation and a shimmy? Ooh, kind of put me on the spot there, bro, but what the hell? I'll do my best Eddie impersonation. Okay, it's kind of tough because you are putting me on the spot. You know what the hell? I'll try my best. I hope I can do Eddie. Hope I can do Eddie justice. So let me see. Oh man, I don't know how to go with this. I'm sorry. Best Eddie impersonation. you know what, Holmes? I'm just gonna say, let's cut the talk and let's get down to fighting, because you're not fighting any other wrestler, Holmes. You are fighting Eduardo Guerrero. You are fighting Latino Heat. So let's cut the talk and let's fight. I say, orale! I hope that was my best. You know, I hope that was my best. So Britha, if you saw that, I hope you liked it, man. Um, so yeah, I am pretty much gonna end it right here. So thank you to everybody who watched this live stream, and I just want to give an early shout out to everybody who will be watching this later on YouTube. If you liked it, as always, comment down below and subscribe. Britha, thank you for tweeting me your questions, and I hope I did Eddie justice with that impersonation. So to end this video, I just want to say, as always, I just want to say, rest in peace, Eddie Guerrero. Thank you for the great matches and great memories you left behind. Your legacy lives on. Viva La Raza. And orale. May your legacy live on. May the Guerrero legacy live on. And, you know, rest in peace, Eddie. And thank you, Eddie. And thank you all for watching. Viva La Raza.